You've heard from Graham West from the Farm Foresters Association about forestry and carbon farming. Let's see how it's affecting the rural market. It's time for our monthly look at the state of said market with the GM of PGG Wrightson, Peter Newbold. And Peter, is carbon farming distorting the sheep and beef property market?
Yeah, it is, Jamie, in a big way. In some cases it could be as much as 50%. So, that's had a big impact on traditional buyers, young farmers or existing farmers who want to grow their footprint. It's just taken them right out of the marketplace. And of course, as you know, the majority of those sales at those levels have gone offshore, which is another interesting point. And I think the other one, I was just looking at some sums this morning, when you look at what's been sold to forestry over the last few years, sort of 500,000 acres, that sort of equates to, 1.5 million stock disappearing, which, is a big number when we look out over the next few years. So, yeah, definitely having a big impact on values.
The interest rates, very much as a dark cloud hanging over the property market, full stop.
Yeah, look, it's definitely having an impact, probably less in rural than in lifestyle, to be honest. And I think the other thing, when you look at the rural market, you've got to look at sectors, regions. They're all different. But in general terms, there is pressure on values. And I think from that point of view, the vendors really need to look at where their expectations lie, because the buyers are just not going to overpay. But I think, it depends on, which sector and which region you're in. But definitely there is some revaluing to go on there.
So the sheep and beef market, in a way, especially on the more marginal land, is being insulated by forestry or the carbon farmers. What about the dairy industry at the moment?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I was just talking to the team this morning. The dairy's looking really good. And, the prices that are being achieved this year so far are in line with last year. So I think that's really positive. And the other thing which is interesting, there's that real sweet point between that sort of $5 and $10 million range where, there's quite a bit of activity taking place. The other thing too is, which this year I haven't seen for some years, is where the whole spring season has been pushed right out. So over the next couple of weeks we're going to see a lot of activity, and it's probably going to set the scene for, autumn sales in the future. But definitely that dairy piece is looking solid. The only thing I would just say is some of those larger blocks, some of our vendors are thinking about, splitting them up and the like, and putting them into a parcel which fits into that sort of $5 and $10 million range.
I want to finish quickly with horticulture and then lifestyle. Horticulture, there's been a few issues. It's been a bit of a star of the stable, but there's labour, there's disease, there's shipping issues, as there is with every bit of primary produce. How are we going there?
Yeah, I think hort has definitely been slower than we expected coming into the season, and at the moment, a lot of our campaigns are sort of in the middle of them, and we'll close out in the next couple of weeks. But again, there's some pressure on values there, and I think they're being reassessed at the moment. And, there's lots of buyers out there, but they're not prepared to pay last year prices, and I think that's pretty simple in that space. So, look, there's still interest in that market, but in some cases, values will come into play, and that goes back to your earlier comments before around interest rates and banks.
Let's finish on lifestyle blocks. They were all the go during or post the COVID pandemic, the first wave of it anyhow. People wanted to get out and spread their wings and get a bit of space between them and other people. That market has taken a bit of a U-turn.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's probably more quality lifestyle properties on the market, this year than last. But I think we've got to remember the peak was a year ago. So vendors need to understand clearly that market has moved, and that the prices that, were achieved a year ago, you're not going to get today. So I think you need to be really realistic in how you price, because there are buyers there, but they're not going to overprice. And I think that's probably the key piece at the moment. The other thing that's coming through is sentiment drives property sales, and at the moment, the sentiment out there by all these commentators or people who think they know property is probably influencing that market as well. But if you price right, it'll sell.
Okay, Peter Newbold, thanks for your time. Great to catch up with you, by the way, on Monday at the Hills Golf Course in Arrowtown. Beautiful piece of land, not for sale, of course, and it would be much more beautiful, Michael Hill, if you're listening, if you filled in all of those fairway bunkers. Got to go, Peter.
Yeah, you have a good afternoon, Jamie. Good to speak.